Comic books and books, another short and sweet section this week like it was last week. Only one thing to talk about. It is the new Ultimates universe. We're talking a little bit of Doctor Doom, getting ready for whatever the hell they're about to do in the MCU. So let's talk about the comic books before it hits the movies. Hello nerds, and welcome to this week's episode of the news as it pertains to comic books and books. No discussion of current storylines, story arcs, or any of those kind of details is going to happen here per se. I am, after all, a one-man organization and can't read every book that comes out and report on it and any of the news therein. But we can talk about new announcements and major changes as they pertain to any of the publishers that we follow, or just generally nerdy literary information in that sense. So let's get into all of that, shall we? And also, if you dig what's going on here, there is a much more up-to-date and possibly relevant, because it takes a second to get these sections posted up, so probably much more up-to-date version of the news in long form I like to call The Week in Nerddom over on the main channel, which you can find linked in the description as well as at the end of this video. That show covers many more points of interest in the nerd community, in the pop culture community at large, and so definitely go check that out. Now let's get into all of those literary notes, shall we? Oh boy, so no follow-ups, no trailers, not much for comic books this week. We do have, though, a piece of regular-ass news. We have the Ultimates. The new Ultimates universe is giving us a little bit more on who this version of Doom is. So I guess kind of spoilers, but at this point, if you're reading the Ultimates universe, then you already know at least a bit of the biggest part of this anyway. And if you're not reading the Ultimates, then you probably don't much care. So take with that what you will. But we are getting a little bit more of a backstory on this version of Doctor Doom as Reed Richards. It's Reed Richards as Doctor Doom. Like this, I think that's every time they've done this in the comic books, it's an interesting situation just because the two of the biggest brains, maybe not the two biggest brains, but two of the biggest brains in the MCU merging effectively into one character is just an interesting thing to see. This is another interesting moral dilemma. So again, I'm not actively reading this arc, so somebody's going to probably take issue with my take on this because I don't know how good or not good it is. But on paper, the interesting bit of this is in this story, in Ultimates number 4, I believe is the issue that they're going to go into this, is you see Reed as Doctor Doom, who is living his life under the thumb of the Watcher. Or the Watcher, is that how it goes? But I did not write it down, so never mind. But either way, this version of Reed, who has lived an oppressed life, who has not had the opportunity to go out and be exposed to the gamma radiation that then makes him into Mr. Fantastic. He instead was turned into Doctor Doom. And he keeps getting visions of the life that could have been. So the interesting philosophical situation is he wants the life that could have been, even though he is stuck in the life that is. And so he wants to force the life that could have been to happen. So motivation for a villain, perhaps? Like, as it stands right now, he is fighting on the side of Iron Man and company. So like, he is ostensibly a good guy. He is Reed Richards after all, but he is also Doctor Doom. So like, really interesting dichotomy of motivations, because Reed is just inherently driven to be good and Doctor Doom is inherently driven to do the things he wants. Not necessarily good or bad, just more self-motivated rather than motivated for things outside of the self. And having that dilemma inside of one character, on paper, sounds like a good philosophical delve, like a good way to get into this philosophy of motivations and what makes a bad guy, and etc., etc. I hope they're doing a good job with this, but again, I'm not reading it. I just don't have the comic book time these days, and I wish I did. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at with that one. Let me know what you think. If you're reading it, let me know what you think of the current arc. If you are pro or anti or whatever, I just really want to hear your take on that one. So that's what we got for regular ass news. Let's get into suggestion this week. Our suggestion, speaking of Ultimates, is the original Ultimate Universe. Starting in 2009, Ultimate X-Men #1 is a really cool reimagining by Mark Millar and company, really cool reimagining of the X-Men universe. The one thing that I think really sets the Ultimate Universe apart from the main universe is that death is permanent in the Ultimate Universe. So it was kind of doomed to fail eventually anyway, because it's just not how we accept comic books as working these days. But I think it's a really cool concept, and it's really well written. Mark Millar just does really good work. He's one of my favorite writers overall, and it's definitely worth a read. So go check out I mean, you can get it in omnibus, you can get it in the trades, you can get it in individual floppies if you're lucky. But either way, check out the original Ultimates universe starting in 2009. However you got to do that. That's your suggestion for the week. That brings us to the end of the video, nerds. Thank you very much for joining me for the news. Once again, there is a full and probably much more up-to-date and recent episode of the news, the full-length version, if you will, called The Week in Nerddom over on the main channel, linked down in the description, and probably link popping up somewhere around my face right about now. So click on that, go check that out as well, or if you prefer your news in more truncated pieces, then by all means just stick around here and go check out some of the other stuff we offer on this channel. Thank you very much for joining me. We will see you in the next one. Before we go, always remember, nerds, that if it is generally nerdy, it's probably here.